Welcome back to 60 Plus Uncensored. I'm your host, Seb Fry, and today I'm joined by John Datri, the founder of FastFit40up.com and the creator of True Spectrum Fasting. This unique approach goes beyond just skipping meals. It's about resetting nutrition, mindset, social habits, and movement to help men over 40 reclaim energy and vitality. We'll explore why fasting works so well at this stage of life and how John's method can truly transform health. Hey, John, thanks so much for joining me on the podcast today. Appreciate you coming on.
Yeah. Hey, it's great to be here, Seb. You're amazing. You're an inspiration in everything that you've been achieving in your life. We've known each other since we were little boys, playing Dungeons and Dragons together, at least with your big brother. And it's pretty cool to see what you and your brother have done. And, to get to share what I'm doing is really great, too, especially now that I'm almost 60 and you're somewhere around there, too. So, that's pretty cool, isn't it?
It is cool. So for those who don't know, this is John Datri, by the way. And I have known John, I guess, since I was probably 8 or 9 years old, way back in the day, although I haven't seen much of him for decades because he moved away to New York City, the Big Apple. And but we reconnected a few years ago for the 75th anniversary of the San Francisco Boys Chorus, which is how we know each other. And shout out to SFBC.
Shout out.
And actually, I actually met a Compass agent because I'm a realtor at a thing in Carmel, and her son is in the San Francisco Boys Chorus, or was in the San Francisco Boys Chorus until very recently. So
super cool.
Yeah. Small world. She's a San Francisco agent, right? So, John, what's going on, man? What are you up to these days? Share with our audience what you're up to.
Wow. It's really exciting for me anyway, what I'm up to. I found myself just like everybody through COVID, having a bunch of change-ups with my business. I had a staffing company, which I still have, but it really got disrupted. In the process, I got into the online space, and in the process, doing sales, just general sales things and education. And then in the process, I found myself out of health. And I had always been somebody who had been in health, somebody who had been a competitive swimmer or played around with, Tai Chi and boxing, just playing around. I'm horrible. Everybody can beat me up. Okay. But, at least, that was the kind of place that I've lived my life. But I found myself really in a bad place, almost pre-diabetic and just not healthy. And the funny thing is I was working in the health and fitness industry for some of the biggest online health and fitness companies, representing them as a salesperson. And so I had a really good seat where I had an opportunity to talk with a lot of people and learn a lot of things. And I said, and I had had literally thousands of conversations with men and women about why they got out of health, what was keeping them out of health, what their whole journey was. And so when I started to get into health, I knew right away what I needed to do. And I'm not a scientist. I'm not a PhD. I'm not a doctor. I'm not like your brother's in Mensa, right? Isn't that how you say it?
Well, see, I think he is in Mensa. Yeah. I don't qualify, but I think he's in Mensa. Yeah.
He is a genius, right? He's a certified genius. But that's not me. I'm a regular guy. And what I teach from and what I'm doing now is I got myself into shape, into health, and it was an amazing transformation for me. And then I started thinking, wow, I want to share this. And it was very quick. So I started helping first my dad in combination, just collaborating with his doctor to help him to, have some options and choices to make. And then collaborating with my mom, who is still going through stuff. And then I started saying, well, let me just take on some clients. Let me just help people. And I started helping people. And then I started, lo and behold, having people reach out and say, hey, how do I hire you to get help? And that's how I started working as a health and fitness coach, specifically focusing on fasting and my own brand of fasting, which I call True Spectrum Fasting, because it encompasses this full spectrum of health. And which would be like biopsychosocial, right? So everything from our what we eat and from our social environment, how we interact with people, from our environment of how our home is set up, the area that we live in, all these things affect our health, right? And so I started. And I wasn't even aware that this was invented by this brilliant guy named George Engel in 1977, right? And as I've been learning more and taking qualification courses and that kind of stuff, it's funny. It's like all these things that I came to my, mind of like, wow, this makes sense. Why isn't it like this? They're actually really smart people who had already came up with these ideas. And I think I just hadn't seen them actually being implemented, right? So I'm sure people are getting trained in them somewhere, but they're not being implemented. And I said, specifically for me, I saw that men were kind of left in the cold. Like women know how to get help. Women know how to take care of themselves. They're just, I remember when I met my wife and I said, I've decided that women are just infinitely more emotionally mature than men. And I'm okay with that. And I'm sure there are many men that are more, that are more advanced in that way. But I just felt like that's something that I identified in the past. And then with health and fitness, I said, wow, I had gotten out of health because my business was struggling. And then I found myself just kind of locked in a room doing sales calls all day and just waiting to get to the weekend to maybe have a beer, eat a box of cookies or something. And, like nothing bad, right? Like nothing like extreme, but the cumulative effect of that when you're in your mid 50s is not good, right? What I could get away with at 35 is very different than what I could get away with now, right? It's like an old car. You got to treat an old car nice, and if you do, you could hand it down through generations. But if you don't, it's not going to turn out very well. So anyway, I got into this. And I started taking on clients and I said, I want to help men because I feel like men often get left behind here. And I feel like that as a man, I want to help other men because we get turned into, we're basically the walking, talking ATMs for our families, which is a good thing. Right? We want to do that. We want to provide for our families. And there's plenty of women that are making more than their men, but I often feel like still like men in relationships feel like I'm here to provide. I'm here to do this. That's my place. I'm not negating the experience of women like contributing the same or even more, but it just seems to be part of our ancestral beingness as men. And so I wanted to have a safe space for men, just a place where men could come and men could heal themselves and really uncover their health that was already there. Because what I found for myself was that so much of my healing, which took place very quickly, was about uncovering this powerful health that was there and not really pushing myself into anything, not some people might say extremes with fasting. You're like, hey, that's extreme. You're not going to eat. Some people might even say, oh, is that an eating disorder? You're focused on not eating. It's really interesting. And I would flip that and say, well, is it an eating disorder that you always feel like you have to eat? I mean, if you think 5,000 years ago, let's just say 5,000, maybe there probably was not much civilization. So if there wasn't much civilization 5,000 years ago, there definitely wasn't Trader Joe's or 7-Eleven. And so if you wanted to get food, you might think about it today and not get it till the end of the week. So for most of history, I don't know how long humans been around. I don't know, 100,000 years, I'm not sure, but a long time. So our biology is such that we are most accustomed to going through these fasting periods that are not going to happen unless we artificially impose them now. And so through doing that, through getting into fasting and allowing these kind of very human experiences, I found my health just rapidly improving. And then I found, and what about these foods? What if I don't get rid of them, but if I just start pushing certain foods to the outside of my food universe? And pushing certain behaviors to the outsides of my behavior universe. And then maybe pushing other ones to the center and making them my center. And I found, wow, this is a really easy path. I don't really have to give anything up. I don't need some meal plan. I always think everybody loves a meal plan until it's staring at them on their plate, right? Nobody likes that, right? It's like, I don't, and I think men is particular, and I'm just rambling here, but I think men in particular, we really don't like being confined with our eating and with our, behaviors. Once again, I'm not, this is not to sound like, to make women upset, right? I'm just talking as a man, protecting our manness, that I know there is a wildness to us in our nature. Once again, I'm just going to preface everything I say today. This is not to negate that in women, but I'm speaking from a male perspective and speaking from the perspective of making a safe place for men to actually be men and do what they want to do. And that has nothing to do with their sexuality or anything like that. It has to do with just their madness. And, I think that finding ways to actually allow health without putting a bunch of rules and restrictions that might look like rules and restrictions, but only from the perspective, from modern day perspective, is really what I'm about. And since I've been doing that, I found great health. And really every single person that I work with, they get amazing health. And that's just a fact. That's just like verified by their doctors. And I'm not a dietitian, so I don't do meal plans, and I collaborate with doctors as a health coach. I say, hey, bring this to your medical team, see what they think. Is this a good idea? And everything you do is your decision. It's not me telling you to do it. It's just look at the information, make your own choice, and I've just had miraculous outcomes. So that's what I'm doing now. So I'm doing that. I still have my business, my staffing company, and I still work supporting enrollments in health and fitness for major online weight loss and fitness companies. Though I'm starting to get possible, people are starting to ask me about, oh, well, why don't you come and also have a contract actually coaching people instead of selling our stuff while you do your company. So that's kind of where I'm at right now. And it's really wonderful for me because it's about me. I'm finding the me in all of this. And if I find the me and then I can share that with people, that's opening a big space in my life at almost 60 years old to really have my own kind of fountain of youth, out of all this.
Totally, totally. So I myself have been doing intermittent fasting now for, I think, 4 years. I think I'm about 4 years into this,
That's
and
nice.
a lot of people are not really familiar with the whole intermittent fasting concept. And you mentioned it, how like for thousands of years, like we haven't had like 24/7 food availability,
Right.
and that like our bodies are not really well adapted to like constantly eating. We were
Yeah.
really, adapted to like eating periodically rather than every single day, 3 times a day. So what are I mean, you're not a doctor, I get it, you're not a nutritionist, but like, can you just sort of like break down what are the alleged benefits of intermittent fasting for people who may not be aware of them?
Okay. Let's look at this like in the simplest way, right? If you want to go and find out the intricacies of intermittent fasting, look up Dr. Ben Bickman. I'm a member of his metabolic classroom online, or look up Dr. Jason Fung, read his books. If you want to get the particular mechanisms, they're great. They're two of my heroes. However, what I will tell you is let's just talk about it in, I think, the way that makes the most sense. So as we eat, our body is generally, in most cases, producing glucose. And as we're producing sugar, we're making sugar, we're putting it into our blood, we're going and fueling our whole body with it, okay? And then what's happening is our body's sending in a hormone called insulin. And insulin's an amazing little humble hormone that does just spectacular things. It's the fuel director of our body. So it's saying like, hey, and what it's always saying is you should burn glucose. I'm going to store glucose and you should burn glucose. Don't burn fat. So as we put food into our body, we're never giving those insulin levels a chance to drop, and we're never giving ourself then a chance to have the body go into fat burning mode. And the body is really smart. And fat is there for a reason, and it's good. It produces a lot of hormones that are important to us. It can keep us warm if it's brown fat, but it's also like our refrigerator. So we eat some food, a little bit of food, or a lot of food, and then we store it. And in the past, maybe we would have went out and we would have hunted an animal, ate, and then we got the animal, and we would have just eaten all. We wouldn't have been like, 30 grams of protein per meal. We would have eaten everything that we could eat. And everybody else, our friends, would all be there eating too. Now we're just covered in blood or whatever, right? And we're like, wow, that was amazing. And I'm probably not going to eat for a while. Or maybe we got to take the rest of this home to the women and the children or whoever, and we're going to now not eat, right? So now all that body fat is going to now get burned. That's your refrigerator. Your body's going to open up that refrigerator door and start eating that body fat. Right at the end of the summer, maybe there's fruit available, maybe like apples in the fall, and you're like, yeah, just eating. And then the apples were not these sweet engineered apples. They were these sour crab apples. But we're like sitting there just eating apples, getting totally insulin resistant. So now our body is like to the point where we're just making more and more insulin. And it's not even really helping us to get the sugar into our muscles and into our cells. We're just storing it as fat because most of the cells now don't even hear it. They can't even hear the insulin anymore. And it just ends up going into fat and getting stored as fat that we can't even use. But now what happens in the past is now there's no more fruit and we're starving and it's freezing. And now our body's like, now that insulin resistance starts to dip because there's no insulin, there's no food. And we start burning all that fat off and we start becoming now sensitive to insulin again. We're losing the body fat. We're losing this really negative fat that can be around our organs. That's like misplaced fat where it's not really supposed to be there. And by springtime, we're ready for our fitness model shoot, and there's food and there's little rabbits running around and we're eating and we're happy, and that's been the cycle, right? But now we don't have that happening naturally. So intermittent fasting is about giving this period to your body, planning periods to your body where you're not eating so that your insulin can drop, so that your body can go into fat burning mode, so that you can start burning your body fat. And if you stick around long enough, then you said, well, what are the benefits? You start getting other things. Your body starts creating something called ketones from the fat that you are now utilizing, that you're burning. And those ketones have all kinds of amazing effects. They create anti-inflammation. They're really good at powering your brain. Your brain has to run on glucose to some degree, but it also can run on ketones. And so now you're getting these extra, this different fuel source to your brain, which is also, the Mayo Clinic is calling cognitive decline, and it's not proven, but they're calling it insulin resistance of the brain, or maybe they're calling it type 3 diabetes. So now you're giving your brain too a chance to kind of not have this insulin shooting and not have this glucose environment for your brain, so that it can start to use these ketones, right, which aren't going to have that insulin response. Maybe it has some, but it's going to be very little, right? I don't even think so, because if you're just burning, right? Then I think that would be very little. I'm sure there's some. I don't know. But anyway, then there's other things too. Your body now at a certain point, and none of these things are like at hour 5, this is what happens. Think of it kind of like slides. your body goes into something called autophagy. Okay, autophagy, I wrote this guy's name down because I thought it was important to give, like in case people wanted to check him out. What's his name? Yeah, Yoshinori Osumi. He did a bunch of really groundbreaking work on autophagy. I think he got a Nobel Prize for it or some big honor for it. But anyway, realizing that intermittent fasting, or not intermittent fasting, but just fasting in general, was a key mechanism for the body going into autophagy. But once again, the body goes into autophagy with exercise. That will create autophagy. But the thing about intermittent fasting is we're pushing the body to an extreme beyond that maybe exercise where we're getting to have autophagy. So what's autophagy? I haven't said that. Autophagy is the body consuming parts of itself that are no longer functioning. Specifically, generally would be proteins. And it's taking these proteins, it's dismantling them, and it's pulling them to the side to use them for other things, rebuild them into new proteins that work, or maybe consume them, eat itself, right? Autophagy means self-eating, which sounds kind of scary, as Dr. Jason Fung said, right? But it's not, because as he also said, the body is not stupid. So the body is not focused on eating your muscle. The body is focused on eating damaged parts of itself that are not functioning. Okay, so you're rebuilding your body, you're eating cells, maybe precancerous cells. The body goes, oh, we got to get rid of those. You're giving yourself this pause button where the body is not needing to digest. It doesn't need to spend any energy doing that. And now the body can spend energy healing itself. Some people say, oh, are you in eating mode or healing mode? I don't generally say that, but I like it, right? I'm healing now. That means I'm not eating. Maybe, and that not eating could be I'm not eating for 16 hours. A lot of people do what's called a 16-8 fast, where they don't eat for 16 hours, and then they have a window of eating for 8 hours. Everybody kind of finds their own way. One of the things I believe at True Spectrum Fasting, Fast Fit 40 Up, is that, everybody is different, and everybody needs to learn to listen to their body. My mom always said, listen to your body, and I thought, Mom, that sounds creepy. And I and I kind of, rejected, like, I'm not listening to my body. But Mom was right. You got to listen to your body. Mom was right. She was right about so many things. And you got to listen to your body, and you will know. Somebody might be good to be fasting for, 48, 72, 96 hours. That's good for them. Somebody else, that's just way too much. 16-8 is perfect. Somebody else, I look at fasting for what I do is very different. So for me, fasting is not just from nutrients. It could be fasting from behavior. So if you're fasting, so you could fast from eating quickly, right? You could fast from eating quickly. One of the things that I like to do to teach people to fast from eating quickly is, I'm sure you've heard, we'll breathe in between bites. But for me, what I like to do is a little bit different. I like to invite people, if they're interested in that, to, while they're chewing, do what's kind of like a Wim Hof breath. And if you don't know what that is, it's breathing in through the belly and then filling the back, filling the top of the chest and the back through your nose while you're chewing. And it's nice because it kind of releases your belly. It releases all that tension. It lets you focus on the chewing, enjoying it. And while you're doing that, of course, your body is sending messages. Oh, there's food being chewed, right? Everything, all the nervous systems work together. So it's going, there's food being chewed right now. Get everything ready in the stomach to start digesting. And the more you chew your food, the more your gastric juices and your intestines and everything's getting ready for food coming, which means you'll digest it better, you'll be able to handle it better, you can be more satiated, everything, right? So just doing that alone, instead of just mindlessly eating really fast, fasting from that behavior of eating quickly. Right? I look at fasting from social behaviors for men. People say women want to please all the time, but men want to. We say, "Oh, you're such a mensch." Right? What does that mean? Like, it means like you're doing everything for everybody. Right? But what about yourself? What about doing stuff for yourself? So it might have people say, would you want to consider, because it's always what they want to do. Would you want to consider fasting from seeking approval? Or would you want to consider fasting from pleasing other people? Not to be mean, but just if you don't want to. Like, if it makes you happy in that moment, that's fine. But is it really making you happy? So the benefits of fasting, right? Just in a traditional sense, typically, we're burning fat. We're normalizing our insulin levels, which is very healthy for us metabolically. We are tuning our brain up, right? So you're also getting, as you fast, you're going to get adrenaline and different hormones that are going to be sent through your body that are going to give you a very sharp focus. For me, before I fasted, I didn't have the clarity that I have. The amount of clarity and focus I have now is unreal. Right? Like, I'm sharper at 57 than I was at 16. Way sharper. It's not even it's not even a comparison. It's really obvious. Like, if you saw a white car and a black car, you go, which is the white car? So fast, and I've found a lot of people who have that experience. It brings down inflammation, if I didn't say that. So in other words, if you're working out in the gym or if you're stressed, it's going to bring down inflammation. It helps me sleep better, and it helps a lot of people sleep better. Sometimes you need the right supplementations that you could ask your doctor about. Things like magnesium can be very useful. The right, like bisglycinate. None of this is medical advice, by the way. This is all just stuff that, you know what I mean? Like, this is just educational purposes. But so you have that in play, and then also psychologically too, the benefits. Like, I think we associate, if you started to fast, most people notice that they associate. I'll ask them to just kind of be conscious when they're hungry. Are you really hungry? And I'll say, like, if you're really hungry, I want you to think of the food you dislike the most. And I say, great, you can have as much of that, tell yourself you can have as much of that as you want. And a lot of time people go, no, I don't want that. I was just thinking about having a cheeseburger. It's like, okay, great, but if you're not going to have a cheeseburger, are you really hungry? No, I just wanted a cheeseburger, right? And now all of a sudden they're not hungry again, because your body has an infinite, for most of us anyway, for me, I've got plenty of fat. So there's an infinite amount of fat to keep burning. It's a cycle. It's supposed to be like that, right? I don't help people get to 8% or, generally 12% body fat. Like, that's not my goal with people. My goal is to help people find a way where they can just have this kind of continual regenerating health, where the aggregate of what they do is on the scale of promoting powerful health, so that they can continue to have these foods in their orbit, like their Aunt Linda's cupcakes. Like, I will never give up my Aunt Linda's cupcakes. They're like heaven, and they have seed oil and flour and sugar. And I can't wait to have them. If there was one here, we'd be sharing it right now while we're talking about fasting. So, but that's because my body is healthy enough. It's robust enough. There's this fancy term I learned recently called allostatic load. And all it means is the total amount of stress that your body is facing. So if your body is facing a lot of stress, it can't handle anything. Fasting is a way to take stress off. It stresses your body, but it's like what's called a hormetic. There's another word, hormetic stress. It sounds like Hormel salami, which I love, but it's not that either. It's just a little bit of stress where it doesn't hurt you, it just makes you stronger. That's what we do when we go to the gym and we lift weights or we do a push-up at home. We're just stressing our body enough without hurting it so that it actually adapts and becomes stronger for the next time. And that's something, and intermittent fasting just makes you stronger and stronger and stronger. It keeps asking the body to perform at a higher and higher level. And you get to a place now where you have this kind of food freedom where you realize like you really understand when you're hungry, when you're not hungry. You understand that there are actually benefits, even if you felt hungry, to saying, hey, there's a reason why I'm not eating now. And normally I wouldn't have to do this because, for most of human history, that would just be imposed upon me. But since I am just going to be bombarded with hyper palatable food all around me. And for most people that are doing reasonably well for themselves, I could literally fill my home with cake, right? Like I could just be in a sea of cake here where I can, right? And I would still have plenty of money. So,
Very true, very true. And so, I'm super into fasting. So I personally do 18 hours of not eating and six
great.
hours of eating. And sometimes it's longer. Sometimes I might go 22 hours. Sometimes it might be less. Like it was my kid's birthday this weekend. And so we had people over. And so I was eating until 10 or 11 at night. And then the next day I started eating around 2 o'clock. So that's only like 12 to 14 hours of fasting, right? But today I stopped eating yesterday at like, I don't know, like 5 p.m., something like that. And I won't eat again today until after 1. That's my normal time. I normally basically skip breakfast and I have a late lunch, which somewhere around 1 o'clock. So today it'll be like 20 hours of fasting. And people say like, don't you feel hungry? And the answer is, I don't really feel hungry. And the reason why I don't really feel hungry is because hunger, it's a hormonal response. People don't really realize that. Like the microbiome in your gut basically says like it sends out like a like ghrelin, right? And other like hormones that
Is that
make
how you
you
say that, Galen? I've been trying to
I,
Galen.
I I think it's ghrelin. I
I
don't
was
know,
I
but
was even gonna Google it today because I was like, I don't want to say that word and look stupid on
well,
said
that's
show.
well, I but go ahead, look
I was
stupid.
like,
I look
Chris
stupid
is
all
going
the
to get
time.
very upset at me. Your
You got to
brother's
feel
going to get.
comfortable looking stupid on my show, that's for sure. So yeah, so it's a response, and that basically comes from like Garen is, I believe, specifically because of sugar, right? Like it's a bacteria that feeds on sugar, and that's why when you eat like a lot of like high carbohydrate, especially high sugar foods, like it causes that bacteria to bloom in your gut, and then as soon as that like when it's dying off, it's like screaming out, give me more carbs, give me more sugar, and that specifically is what makes you feel really hungry. And because I do intermittent fasting, like I don't want to eat a lot of those foods that I know when they burn off, they're going to make me feel hungry. So like I don't generally feel very hungry. Um, like I feel empty, but I don't really feel hungry very often. And then when I do get hunger pangs, or I don't know if they're pangs or sensations of feeling hungry, if I'm outside of my eating window, I'll do the simple thing, which is what people say is like I'll drink water, right? I mean, like nowadays I drink water, which it's really important to drink a lot of water for many, many reasons, especially as you get older to stay hydrated. So I'll drink a lot of water, and I'll drink black coffee. That's basically what I survive on. I don't drink a whole lot more other than those things. I drink iced tea sometimes. I just recently, well, not recently, a few months ago, stopped drinking soda. I've always drank Diet Coke, but now I've quit drinking Diet Coke. I've just found fasting to be such a wonderful thing because it puts me really more in control without having like I don't really have like a meal plan at all, really. My meal plan
Yeah,
is very simple. Like I try to eat, and I'm pretty good about it, between 1 p.m. and 7 p.m. That's basically my eating window. I'm probably eating in that window 85% of the time or
it's
more.
great.
And because of that, I want to eat more whole foods, less ultra processed foods, which is what I grew up eating, right? Like I grew up eating pizza and hot pockets and pop tarts and like all that crap. Um, how about you? Do you like how has intermittent fasting changed your diet, or has it at all?
It's totally changed my diet. And once again, it's not. to say, it's interesting, intermittent fasting. And I think, and just for clarity, I think ghrelin, ghrelin, whatever you say, I think that would be a hormone, right? That would be like kind of the opposite effect of like a leptin. And I do think, and I agree with you that that everything going on in the microbiome in our bowels, they're gonna, it's funny that because you have that direct link of the vagus nerve going down to the bowels, and I've heard from so many smart doctors that literally these misbalanced microorganisms are literally like calling, which as a result, like you said, are fed on by sugars, are literally calling up the vagus nerve to the brain saying, I want more sugar, I want food, I'm hungry. And that's producing that hormone of ghrelin. I'm pretty sure, but I'm probably wrong. But anyway, that's what I think it is. So anyway, but as far as eating, yes. So here's the thing, for me when I started, I remember I was eating better, and I knew that it made sense to me. I started trying to cut out foods with sugar, and I started trying to cut out foods with that were ultra processed, and just eat more whole foods. And I cut out grains, and I was eating sourdough bread, which is fine, it's great. All these foods are great, but that's how I was kind of eating. And then as I got into fasting, I started realizing like that there were foods that were going to make me that made it harder for me to fast, because they made it harder for me to become fat adapted. And so I started eating foods, and they're all like you said, right? Like that would prevent me from being fat adapted. And I started moving towards a diet that was higher in protein and fat and lower in carbohydrate, as well as everything that you said I had a coach. So I was initially doing low, eating, avoiding flour, eating grains, eating foods with added sugar, avoiding ultra processed foods. But then he told me about seed oils. And, there's a big figure right now screaming about seed oils. I don't support that person, just so you know. But I am going to say that, and I don't want to get political, but I just don't want to be labeled politically over talking about seed oils. But, they are in everything that I've seen and read about, from Dr. Kate Shanahan to Dr. Chris Kenobi, and all the work out there. And I know some of this work, and even the stuff I've seen from Dr. Ben Bickman, that some of this stuff is epidemiological, in the sense that these are not like double-blind studies, and they're not perfect scientific studies, but it's still very clear. But some of the studies are scientific studies, just in showing the fact that seed oils have double bonds. So to be simple, seed oils, the fats in seed oils are different than the fats generally in animal products, right? These are oils that are made, that are manufactured in very intense processes that involve a lot of heat, a lot of pressure. Taking like 5,000 sunflower seeds to make a half a teaspoon of sunflower oil. So there's a lot of things that are not very normal going on to make this oil. And in the process, these oils that are already omega-6 oils, which are fats that have little openings in them so that they can be oxidized easier. Just think, they have like little doors. Think of omega-6 fats as like fats that have bad locks on their front door. And so bad guys can open the lock a lot easier and get in and leave the house destroyed. And then they get out. And then now that destroyed little omega-6 cell, now they're going to create havoc in the body. They're going to make inflammation, which can make plaque in your arteries. They're going to create an environment where they're harder to burn. They're harder to burn than saturated fats, so they're going to stick around in your body longer. And now you'd think, oh, well, then I shouldn't eat any vegetables or things with omega 6, but that's not the problem. Because when you're eating regular sources of omega 6, okay, when you're doing that, they're coming complete with this whole package of antioxidants. They're like with their own little fire trucks to put out all the fires and problems that happen. But when you eat omega 6 from a seed oil, all of that has been stripped away. That's why they can be burned. That's why they have a very high smoke point. So when you cook with them, when you cook with these canola oils and things, these seed oils, they don't burn because everything has been taken out of them that would be those little firemen that are coming with them, so that when there's a problem, they can say, hey, that's okay. We got we got the water to put the fire out. Just get the good stuff from that omega 6. And you're just eating this normal amount of food. You're not eating 5,000 sunflower seeds to get a tiny little drop of oil. So it's not that omega, in my opinion, from what I've read, it's not that omega 6s are bad. It's that we get such condensed quantity of them everywhere because of the process. And then not only that analogy back of the door having the bad lock, but when you damage the oil by putting it under heat, under pressure, and then putting it in a bottle in a store where there's light, those are the three things that create oxidation. Now you have a situation where this is just a toxic chemical already in the bottle. Before you even start cooking with it or doing anything, you ingest it, and then, if that's the right word, and then it starts immediately going into these being oxidized by these other things called reactive oxygen species that come along and start oxidizing through these bad locks.
So
Right.
seed oils are like corn oil is a seed oil. Is that right? I mean,
So
people don't
corn
corn
oil,
oil.
bran oil, canola oil, safflower oil. Uh, Tell me some more.
Sesame oil.
Sesame oil, and I've understand it's not so bad, and because of how it's because the process doesn't require as much heat. I could be wrong on that. I know peanut oil, for instance, Dr. Kate Shanahan says peanuts have been domesticated and used so long. If anyone's ever tried to make natural peanut butter, the amount of oil that will come out of peanuts just by grinding them is insane. So there's just a lot more of it. It doesn't take that much to get oil out of a peanut, but it's still included. Anything processed, right, is going to be included. There's a list called the Hateful Eight. And, once again, when I look at a label, if it's not going to be olive oil, if it's not, palm oil is actually okay. So palm oil isn't a seed oil, but once again, it's not great because it's gone through this a lot of processing, but it's way better than a seed oil. So I'm not like necessarily, say, hey, that's awful. A soy oil, like most of the oil we get these oils in so much of the food that we eat. So it's funny you said it, back to this thing about the foods that I got rid of. So then I had a coach and he said, hey, John, instead of just those big three, I have something called the big four, which also involves seed oil, right? So it was like seed oil was added to flour, foods with added sugar, and ultra processed foods. So those seed oil. And what I find is if you just avoid seed oil in foods, if you were just to not avoid it, but let's say push it to the outer circle of your universe. So you eat it, right? Like, I had chips this weekend while I was hanging out with my family, and they were cooked in vegetable oil. Anything that says vegetable oil is seed oil. It's fine, right? But it's on the outskirts of my universe. I'm not eating chips every day. That's just something that was fun to do, and I'll do it again.
Yeah. So seed oil, like I understand, like seed oil basically is a major contributor to inflammation. Like inflammation causes all kinds of issues in the body,
Plaque.
arthritis, plaque, yeah, and cancer. I'm told. they posit that a large reason why colon cancer is now such a big thing in the United States is largely due to the increased consumption in seed oils. Have you heard anything about that?
I haven't heard anything about it. I wouldn't be surprised if that's the case. Um, you know, the biggest finger that I see probably in causing in cancer, from what I've read, and I'm not an expert at it, would be sugar. That sugar is the big problem. And like you said, we were raised on sugar. Sugar was love. I was given sugar in a way like it was a loving thing, right? Even your birthday, happy birthday to you. Here's a cake, and you're like, oh my
Because of
god,
sugar.
you know?
You love me.
Love it. And I love sugar. I absolutely love it. So I'm not going to lie about that. And I'm not going to get sugar out of my life. But I understand that it has to be kind of out here. And what I do understand is that in general, so back in that thought of like, as we're like fasting, the problem is when you eat foods that are high in sugar, and understand that carbohydrate is a sugar, it's just sugars all joined together. So when you're eating foods that are high in sugar, what that's doing is creating insulin. And when you're creating more insulin, now your body is taking whatever it used, it's taking the rest, it's taking a lot of that sugar and storing it. And that means now that your blood sugar is dropping. And if your blood sugar drops, what happens? You get hungry. So now you want to eat more. So if you decide, hey, I want to be able to intermittent fast, and you're eating a lot of carbohydrates and you're not using them, right? Someone say, oh, I saw the sugar diet. Yeah, most of the evidence on the sugar diet are from men. So don't get mad at me, ladies, women. From men who are in amazing shape and are running marathons and are doing triathlons and are, just in crazy shape. And they're seeing their insulin levels drop. And that's probably because they're also having less protein. And protein can create that spike in a bigger rise in insulin, though I don't think it's a big problem from what I've seen. I'm not worried at all about having protein as far as raising my insulin levels. My concern for me is dropping my sugar level, my sugar intake. And I find that on that question again about changing with fasting is that when I drop my sugar levels, my carbohydrate levels, I really don't feel hungry like you said. I don't get hungry. I'm happy not eating. And when I'm not eating, I feel my whole body performing and healing and cleaning and my brain focusing really sharp. I'm like, okay, I got to get work done. I don't want to eat. I don't want to, I can feel that. I do not want to be eating while I'm doing serious stuff.
Yeah, it's like if you work in an office, you go out to the big office lunch, you come back and you're dead, right? I mean, like your afternoon is gone, right? Between 1 and 3 o'clock, as you're digesting that food, you're really not hardly doing anything. I've noticed that myself, like when you stay hungry, you stay sharp. So you're looking actually like really good. So you have a coaching business, like you actually do like personal coaching around like fasting and nutrition and exercise. Tell me about that.
Yeah, I do, but I want to say, if I can, I want to say something that I think is really important. I want to make sure we don't run out of time on this. Anybody can always look me up, at John B. Datri on Facebook or Instagram or FastFit40Up. That's great. But what I want to say, it's like you're one of the top real estate brokers in the country, right? Or you're at a very high level of what you do, right?
Better than average.
Yeah. And I bet you there's a lot of people that talk to you, and if you ask them how to be a great real estate broker, they would tell you exactly what you do. They would say, yeah, I get it, Seb. 100%. And they would be able to tell you everything that you do. And you'd be like, yeah, that's it. You just do that and you're going to be great. You're going to be very successful. And yet they're struggling and struggling and struggling. So what's really important, and what I do, I guess it's kind of answering a little bit about that question, but most people do not know how to plan. They don't know how to figure out, if I want to do this, what's the process to get there? What is the process to get here? And it's these very little steps, right? Like in NLP, it would be like chunking down. We have to chunk down to these little nuggets that we can use, because I can't tell you how many dietitians and doctors, sports medicine doctors that I meet that are, sad. Like, there's plenty that are in great shape, but there's plenty that are also out of shape, just like anybody else, because they don't know how to plan to use the information that they have, right? And there's so much shame associated with food. There's so much shame associated with our bodies and the fat that we have. And as men, like, we want to be muscular and powerful and strong. We want to be that guy for our spouse, for our kids. And so there's a lot of shame, and shame pushes these kind of goals harder away because, you don't want to stand too close to something that would cause you shame. So it's really hard. You're just kind of looking at it across the room and wondering, how do I get this done? So it's, I think one of the biggest skills, because if you can't do something consistently, then it doesn't matter how much you know, right? If you can't do whatever you have to do to be a great real estate broker, to be in great health, to be happy, it doesn't matter that you know how to write a book about it. So it's really important then to kind of start figuring out what you're ready, willing, and able to do. And then from there, kind of going like, well, what is this smallest little step that I can do? Because so much about having a transformation is about changing your identity. You really have to change your identity, right? And you change your identity by taking action, by doing things. Oh, I'm a person who does this, or I'm a person who does that. So like if somebody's working with me, for instance, and they're having struggles, let's say even going to the gym, but they want to go to the gym, then I might say, well, how would you feel, like, collaborate, because I want to know what, because it's always got to be about from them, so it's from them. I could tell you a bazillion things, but it's useless to the next man. But like maybe they're like, hey, look, why don't you just go slap the gym door? I don't even want you to go. You're not allowed to go to the gym. But could you just make a practice of starting to walk to the gym door and touching it? Because now you're a guy who goes to the gym. You've just changed your identity. And when you feel it, and you don't have to, you could walk in the door. And you could just, because, they always say, like, coaches, like, the heaviest weight is the door to the gym. So, but it's true. So just walk in, open the door, I'll say, and then look at your watch, like, so you're not embarrassed. Look at your watch like, oh my God, I forgot my meeting. And then walk right out, right? Or whatever you want to do. Or you don't have to do that if you don't feel embarrassed. It's fine. But whatever, don't make an excuse why you're not going to open the door. So just changing your identity. So coaching is not about, like, and there are guys like you figured out, like, you got it together. You got all this stuff together. There are other people who know exactly what you know and what I know, and they don't know how to apply it, right? They're not getting it done. They don't have the health they want. They're not playing with their kids. They're not doing what their kids ask of them. They're not doing what their wife asks of them, like in a good way, right? Like participating. They're showing up with the money. Here's the money. I got the money. But they're not participating. And that's a shame, because why did they get married? Why do they have kids? Or why do they have a lover? Or why do they have whatever it is, right? So, it's really important to, so what I'm about is giving people support to learn what they're willing to kind of start making changes. Because if they could start making these little changes, they can really evolve and become, they can change their identity. And by changing their identity, they can allow the person that's already there to be present, Because most people, it's not that they have to, like, get somewhere. They just have to let go of all this stuff. And the great thing is they don't even have to let go of it. They can just put it out here. They can just have it out here instead of right here. And most of the people, the cake is right here. I want to put the cupcakes here. And every now and then I can just go, oh, wow, that's great. I don't want the cupcake here. That's not good.
Right.
So it's really important with that. And I think that, once again, the problem for men is because we're so focused on being the provider, and like, it's cool. Like, hey, it's cool for a man to be overweight. It's cool for a man sometimes to be unhealthy almost. Yeah, I'm a guy. That's what I'm doing. But
The
in the end of
dad
the
bod.
yeah, the dad. There you go, right? But is that really cool for the dad? Because for the dad, usually the thing clients always tell me when I'm talking to them, you'd be surprised. They're just like, I just want to wear the clothes I want to wear again. And I go, oh, why is that important to you? Because it seems like a surface level thing. Like, why would you care about that? It's like, because I feel like I can't really be me. I'm like putting on these like outfits as a dad, but it's not really me. And I want to be me again. And it's like, yeah, okay, so let's find a way to slowly go to you again, right? Without clubbing you over the head that you have total control over, right? Not here's your meal plan. You got to do this. You got to give everything up. No sugar for you. You're not eating either. Did you eat? Did you eat today? You're supposed to not eat for 3 days. That doesn't work very well for most people, especially not men who are like in control of their lives and got everything else under control, but not the food. And now that doesn't work well. That's not going to turn out well for anybody. So you got to go baby steps. That's the way.
Yeah, that is the way. That is the way, baby steps, one step at a time. So if people want to get a hold of you to talk about coaching, because it seems like you'd be a great coach, honestly, really.
Well,
I think you,
thanks,
you sound
man.
like somebody who's ready to meet people where they are, and just to guide them, to take the steps they need to do to, get back into health. And I don't believe there's any reason why people who are 60 or 70 years old can't become really super healthy again. The body is certainly, like there's no medical reason why that couldn't be. How do people get a hold of you if they want to talk to you about, you getting involved in their fasting or their health or any of
Yeah.
that? What's the best way to reach you?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So the best way to reach me, is either go to the fastfit40up.com. That's super easy, and you can contact me there. I will say when anybody's going to work with me, I want to have a conversation with, there's no cost for it. I want to have a conversation with you first and make sure we're a good fit because I only want to help people that I can help and that are ready to get my help. And I might refer you out to somebody who makes more sense. Or you can always reach me also on John, John, B like Bravo, Datri, Delta, Alpha, Texas, Romeo, India. That's Datri, John B. Datri on Facebook, on Instagram. I'm there for you. So just reach out. We could have a conversation real quick, see if there's a good fit here. And I can definitely help you. Everyone that I've worked with has had amazing results. I think that's part of the reason too, because I make sure that they're looking for the kind of help that I can actually give, right?
And here, I didn't even realize that you have this. I'm on your website right now, fastfit40up.com. Yeah, I didn't even realize that you actually had this. So this is very cool. So you have products for sale on your website, I guess.
Yeah,
What what
so I
what
have
do you what do you sell?
that's just coaching. I have coaching there, and truthfully, it's all evolving. So just like so what I teach is true spectrum fasting. It's based on becoming metabolically conscious, right? That's the name of my podcast too, which is about what are the things that can make us metabolically healthy, what can cause us to be metabolically unhealthy. And if the aggregate of those things are in your favor and maybe balanced across the scale of the different spectrums in metabolic consciousness, then you can really break all the rules and do anything you want and not have to, have any kind of restriction in your life, which is how I live, which is pretty cool. And that's what I teach, but it's evolving, right? I always come with a beginner mindset. I'm here to constantly grow. I figure out this is a little bit better. I change my system, but I have a very clear system that I walk people through that I've developed. It's all science-based, and it's also based on my journey and what's worked for me and what I've seen work with all of my clients. So if you're interested in talking about that, about finding powerful metabolic health, if you're interested in doing it in a way where you have the autonomy and control, and we work around you and your busy schedule and all that stuff, hey, we'll have a great time. Reach out to me, and I'd love to hear from you.
I didn't even realize that you have a podcast. So I've just subscribed to that as well, Metabolically Conscious, because I'm super into all this stuff. I'm super into like gut microbiome and like fasting and like cardio
You
and
look
and all
great,
that.
man. You look fantastic, and I'm really happy because it saddens me when I see my boyhood friends and they're not doing well. and they're not taking care of themselves. And I think, like, I look at you and I go, man, you got decades and decades to go. Like, you got a good life and you're like powerful in your career. And like, why would you want to have a powerful career, make a lot of money, and then be in a position where you're going to, have a shortcut life and not be there for your family? Like, that's crazy. Like, it's not crazy. It's sad, but I just, it breaks my heart. It breaks my heart when I see guys that I know want so much more and they just don't know how to get it. But you obviously get it. That's why it was cool to be here. And I'm happy that we really connected because, just to see all these commonalities. And it's interesting to me that, I think where we were fortunate as kids, maybe through the boys' course, was to just see all the possibilities of life, how really wondrous things could happen, right? I know for me, we saw a advertisement in the paper, the San Francisco Chronicle, and like a couple of years later, I'm traveling the world and meeting, royalty, and I don't have to go to school. I'm hanging out with Mayor Feinstein, and it was pretty cool, just for a regular kid. So I kind of grew up with the thought that anything was possible, and anytime I get off that and I'm getting away from thinking anything's possible, then my compass goes like, no, this isn't good. What's going on, John? Right? And I think you have that too. And a lot of the boys' course guys that I meet, they all seem like they're thriving and doing cool things, and they're finding their way to what they want to do, and I think that sometimes, even though people can be really successful, it's not really what they want. They're not really finding their way to who they are. And that thought that I have is that if we're not happy inside, and what I've seen from thousands and thousands of conversations with men and women is that you can change your body, but if you don't change inside, if you don't change how you feel about yourself, if you see yourself as an old Prius or whatever those cars are, like some old beat up Honda, and not a Bentley or however you want, a Jaguar, whatever you like, right? You're not going to treat yourself with care. You're going to spill a shake on the seat. You're like, who cares? Somebody rear ends you. You're like, don't worry about it. It's not a problem, right? But if you see yourself as a Bentley, you're going to be like taking care of it. Wow, that car. Wow, it's amazing. You're going to be so happy. I love this car, right? And you're going to treat your body like that. So you've got to find a way for people to discover that Bentley or that, maybe that's a horrible example, but it's like sounds materialistic. But I just mean we treat our possessions that we work hard for with care. And you don't know how many people would be like, in a second, they're going to get their grout fixed if there's a little crack in it, but, they wouldn't go to the doctors, or they wouldn't take care of themselves, or they wouldn't start running when they felt like they needed a little more energy, right? But they would fix the grout. So, because that's my home. That's my biggest investment. So it's like we want people to see themselves as their biggest investment and have a place where, I'm caring about their health as much as they care about their health, and we can partner on that, and we get their healthcare team involved. If that's, a place where they are with their health, we can collaborate and give them some. So my goal is for everyone to become. I want people to not be abdigators of their health. I want people to take control, because I think we're at a place in history where pretty much all the information is out there. It doesn't matter what you do, right? You can be a doctor, lawyer, real estate broker, health coach. The information's out there. So we just want to be in a place where everybody knows where the information is, and then you're getting humans to help you to really use their experience and their real care, but not to just tell you this is how it is. That's not empowering at all. And it's usually incorrect, because everybody is so different. Everybody's body and mind and soul and environment, their biopsychosocial, according to, what's his name, George Engel, is also different. That's why the meal plan doesn't work.
Amen to that. All right. Well, John, thank you so very much for taking the time with us here on 60 Plus Uncensored. It's been a pleasure.
Dude, it's an honor. I'm so honored to be a part of celebrating where we are here, us Gen Xers, all like just, coming into our own. And I feel like we really now with AI, it's the fountain of youth. Everything is possible now, but it's not possible without your health.
That's right. Yeah, if you don't have your health, you don't have anything. All right, John, thanks so much for being on the show. I really appreciate it, and I'll catch you on the flip side. All right, that's a wrap for this episode of 60 Plus Uncensored. Huge thanks to John Datri for setting the tone with such honesty and insight. Now, if you like this episode, do me a favor and do John a favor. Hit that subscribe button, leave a review, and then share it with someone you know who needs to hear it. Oh, and by the way, if you know anyone over 60 who's still out there doing big things, living boldly, working with purpose, or just aging on their own terms, I would love to hear from you. Reach out at team60plus.com or join the conversation on Reddit at 60 Plus Uncensored. I'm Seb Fry, and this is 60 Plus Uncensored, because as we're learning, life after 60 isn't the end, it's just getting good.
Subscribe now.